Thank you everybody for coming. It's my first DjangoCon. I'm pretty excited to be here. Got a wonderful event going on. And the first thing to do is fix the title. I don't know how many people know what an SSO is, but that actually stands for a single sign-on. So before proceeding, just a quick heads up. I marked this talk for everybody, and it's true. I think that everybody, regardless of level, can take insightful things from our experience, but some bits might be a bit in depth or a bit too security-ish. So don't worry. We'll hope that by the end it all holds up and you can say I didn't lie. So let's get started. About me, briefly, I'm a computer engineer. I'm CTO and co-founder at Octobot. I'm a big football, soccer fan. And I work on Octobot. And at Octobot, we design, develop, and deploy custom software solutions. We use Django primarily for our backend development, and we really enjoy transforming ideas into products people love. So both the company and myself are from Uruguay. You are pretty, you should feel free to do not know where Uruguay is, because it's a small, very small country right down there. It's about 6,000 miles off, something of here. Hooray for planes. And we are, what I'm here to present today, it's a project that we undertook for the Uruguayan government, in which we created a single account for all services, and that can be expanded into others. So I know some stuff about the US, and I'm guessing you have users for or credentials for IRS, DMV, your health provider, banks, and so on. And all of those have different levels of assurance of who you are. You cannot create an account online if the bank does not know who you are. So what we did, we created a single sign-on for the Uruguayan government, in which you have one account that you will use for either public services and also some other private services that need some form of assurance of who you are. If they don't need that, they can also use your service. So a bit of what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to give you a brief context about Uruguay mainly, because it's not that much popular. About the challenge that we face and what were the peculiarities of it, the solution that we deploy. That part will be, the first part will be about security mostly. Then we'll take a slight peek under the hood, and I'll present something that we did that we found interesting to share with you guys, and some takeaways. So let's get started. Uruguay. We are 3.5 million people down there. When you're under 5, you like to count that 500,000 people. We have a centralized government. It's not a federal government, it's a centralized government. Around 70% of citizens there are internet users. I would say it's a bit more, but nonetheless, that's a third-party assessment. There are very good access to broadband and 4G throughout the country. There's no complex geography or something like that, so it's pretty available. And there's also a high availability of web-capable devices. So pretty much everybody can access either a cell phone that has web capabilities or smart laptops or something like that. Okay, so digital Uruguay. All of that background actually placed Uruguay on the road for the last 10 years, pushing through in becoming one of the, let's say, leading digital nations regarding e-government. It's right now one of the 9 countries in the D9 countries. It's a network of collaborative countries that push efforts to improve citizens' lives throughout technology. We have a national ID card. We have, like, forever had a national ID card and number. Each Uruguayan has a primary key, let's say. Right now, that card is electronic, so it has some things that we'll see right now. And there is an e-government agency called AGESIC. Whenever I say this word, AGESIC, I'm actually saying those letters, so follow me, please. And AGESIC takes care of regulation and guidelines for laws and decrees and stuff like that, and also execution and orchestration of projects through third parties. They do not get involved directly into projects executing that. We would like to thank them for collaboration on this talk. So a bit about the ID card and what information is there. There's like a sample ID card where you have last names, first names, date of birth, and that's 9999.999, it's our primary key. And this card reveals some stuff about what the registration procedure is. So that card actually has, for you to take that card, you have to give your fingerprints. You got fingerprint scanned, you got a picture taken, and they give you this card. That, and you set a PIN, you can actually set a PIN on the card, and you can create digital signatures. So we have a registration, a high confidence on who that person is and the registration. That's a standard procedure. That was a brief mention about that. So the government, as part of digital initiatives and so on, established goals. So there are many of them, but the 3 that concern us for this talk today are, well, first, they wanted to have a single point of contact, a single digital point of contact for all the services it provides. To be available for every citizens to perform their procedures and operations digitally and remotely, so they can, from the house, do whatever is necessary with the government, and also provide shared services and assets for third parties, such as a single sign-on. So what's the challenge here regarding the single sign-on? So the challenge is authentication. Why? Well, because we must do systems that can provide easy, secure, and accessible authentication for all citizens. You cannot leave users outside your system. You have to support them all. In fact, people that might have the hardest time using digital systems are probably the ones that can take most advantage of performing things remotely and from their houses. We also want to provide different integration protocols to reach out to as many organizations as possible. This is a win-win scenario, let's say. If a lot of organizations the citizens have a single sign-on to use on multiple organizations, public and private. If a lot of organizations use that system, the citizen will have, the organizations will have a trustworthy source of information regarding who that user is and how it performs authentication to reach out to their systems. So a lot of things went into the decision pipeline, but at one point they decided that they do not want to go with an off-the-shelf solution, let's say. They wanted to build a single sign-on provider. So what should it provide? So what should this solution provide? So first, it should provide multi-factor accessible single sign-on. Citizens should be able to provide who they are in an accessible way and secure way. Use a standard open protocol implementation. So Don't go around inventing different stuff. Provide some basic profile information, name, last name, maybe an email would be nice. And finally, one of the things that triggered this custom build is, well, you must implement some way to register on your system that, yes, this guy is who he says he is. This user is who he says he is. And also, use custom authentication factors. Our ID cards are capable of doing digital signature. I should be able to use my digital signature as a way of authenticating with a system. So all that had to be custom made. Now, how should it be? Those are like the requirements, but how should it be, or the non-functional requirements? Well, it should be reliable. So it must be secure. Citizens must trust the system, the organization that integrates with the system must trust the system. It should be scalable. It should not have downtimes. It should not suffer from unexpected and synchronized usage. For instance, if a tax deadline is coming up, you don't want that ID system, that authentication system to go down. It should be adaptable. Things change, and this is, in a lot of ways, uncharted territory, so it's pretty important to make it a solution adaptable. It should be open. The government should be able to see what's going on in that system. And it should be accessible, both in a maybe more classic disabilities way, but also regarding devices. So we want to reach out to as many people as possible, and that implies providing support for as many devices as possible. So with all of this in mind, the government said, okay, call for proposals. Who can do this? So several providers went in, and we said, we can totally build this with Django. So we worked with Django regularly, and we said, we can do this. We have never worked with the government before, but this seems like something that we can do. So, yeah, they say the same thing. These proposals have an evaluation phase and so on. Not everybody was as on board as other teams. So the product owners were really thrilled to be working with Django and us, but that was not maybe the perception across the organization, particularly given that this was a cornerstone project for them. So the solution. By the way, I'm here giving this talk, so it went all right. The solution. There it is. You can actually go online. If you have your passport and you know Spanish, you can actually create your account. If not, you can go and become a citizen, and you'll be fully enabled to access the solution. It's really a web app. And I'm not going to show it because people have recommended me not doing demo with conference Wi-Fi and so on. But you can go there. We hope that you see something that's worth it. So some numbers. Right now, there are about 350,000 citizens in the platform. That's about 10% of our country, so yay. But about a third of them are certified accounts. So you know when Twitter shows you the tick? So those are certified accounts that have either gone in presence to certain stations where they can certify themselves, or use their digital ID card to perform verification. And we have about those daily interactions. So what's in the box? It's not a complex product, and I want to see this right now because we're going to do a bit of security. And I want just to say it's not a complex product. It's not a complex domain. The reality is not that much complex. Models are not that much complex. So there are two React apps. One, the one you'll see in that domain. The other are for back office and certification purposes. And there is a Django project serving all of this. As notable mentions, we have Celery doing some stuff. and of course, Django REST framework. Should mention, it's a must mention, that library that basically provides you with an out-of-the-box OpenID Connect provider by Juan Saavedra. That's actually a neighbor from Argentina, I believe. So it's a great library. You should check it out if you are ever faced with this situation. So security. One of the important things about security is understanding threats and avoiding incidents, particularly understanding threats. So I'm guessing most of you are developers and not construction site workers. If there are, you might not be surprised what follows, but for you developers, you go around and you'll see the signs on a construction site and says, wear a helmet, wear war boots. And for us, it's pretty evident that you should do that. It's like, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't somebody wear a hat in a construction site? Things go off. Well, it's because you have to remind that because people that is there on an everyday environment, it's like normal for them. Like, things fall, it doesn't happen to me, it's okay, no worries. But there should be signs like this in software development companies. Now, why aren't those there? Because the risks are not that evident. So you're faced with situations that are not that like, yeah, you know what? That huge crane might fall, and if I don't have my helmet on, I'm surely dead. This is like, yeah, I couldn't deploy that, so I disabled this flag over here. We're fine. You're not. Avoiding security incidents, it's about understanding the risks and also doing some stuff that also construction sites do, that is preparing or working in a safer environment. Well, first, it's understanding. So we did threat modeling. First important thing, threat modeling. Understand what you're facing regarding security. Second, do security by design. Make your project, your product, as secure as possible from the get-go. Do not do things that might introduce problems. In concrete, use least privilege and security in depth. Those are security principles. And also, finally, that's something that applies to construction site workers as well. No one else is checking your work. You are the last line of defense in security. This is for all developers that were working on this project. It's like, you are the last line of defense. It's security, it's up to you eventually. There will be checks by others, there will be pen testing, reviews, security scannings, and so on. But assume that can fail. You are the last line of defense. So I'm going to speak about threat modeling. Briefly, what we did, threat modeling is an iterative process to identify problems, possible points of vulnerability. We find out that improves risk perception and vulnerability awareness, so developers are much more aware of what the problems really are, how the attacks work, and where vulnerability might pop up. Provides an in-depth understanding of the security settings, that goes for Django, and the protocol. So you can start to see why, okay, this token is sent over here, and it's announced, so don't use it twice, because you start to get a sense of why things are there. And it has become a must-do security exercise for software projects, from our experience. There are several techniques. One is elevation of privilege. It's a card game. We think it's a fun approach to threat modeling. It's based on a stride classification of vulnerabilities. Go check it out. It's very good. You need a bit of a security background, but not that much. And it's open access, made by Microsoft. You can download it and print it, and I think you can buy them as well. So what security practices came out of this? Well, first, establish non-default restrictive global, use non-default restrictive global settings. So don't go with the defaults if you don't know what they are. Make endpoint declarations explicit in access. When you declare an API endpoint, be sure that you know who has access to use that operation. This implies keeping permission granular and semantic. You know, when you write that permission, being granular and semantic. Don't go about reinventing the wheel. So use a standard crypto, use a standard protocols. Do not repeat yourself. You probably are introducing vulnerabilities if you are repeating code. Practice security in depth. Write the deployment configuration. Know what's going to run and what the communication paths are in your backend deployments. Perform extra checks, even if it's in inner communication. Apply the least privilege principle. You should provide only the necessary data and operations to a user to perform the necessary transaction. And last but not least, don't forget about availability. One of the most common attacks is denial of service, and don't make an attacker's life easier. Identify failure points and implement protections such as throttling or good scalability guidelines. So these are the security practices that arise from threat modeling and security by design. We'll go about in how they impacted specifically different aspects, such as architecture. We regularly use, like always, 12 factors. Go check it out if you don't know them. I've placed these 4 because are the most important in our work for this project, in this case. It allows us to evaluate good integrations, avoid setup mismatches, and other problems that might introduce security vulnerabilities. Regarding the API, we didn't use microservices. It's not a complex reality. We use REST framework. We did group the API by availability and scalability requirements. So the authentication endpoint is actually much more used than the management endpoint for authentication factor, like change your password. You don't do that often. Don't use default serializer. Be explicit about the serializer you're using, and actually be slim about those serializers. And use throttling. We said that already. Regarding development, we use GitFlow. It's easier to handle if you have multiple environments like test, station 2, pre-prod, and prod. For our experience, it's a better way to handle that without having code differences. We use a static code analysis at all levels, front-end, back-end. It's enforced at CI, so we are looking at the code as it goes into the repo. We use Docker Dev environment. There was a talk about this here, so go check it out. We use Go scripts, as in not Go the language, but Go scripts. Check it out. They're pretty good, made by Mike Bland. It avoids us CI dev environment mismatches. So we have the CI and dev team run exactly the same scripts and commands. So that's pretty useful to avoid introducing vulnerabilities. And we do peer reviews. Finally, log smart, log carefully, log plenty. You have to be careful about which data you're logging. You have to log plenty of information because you want to have audit capabilities and perhaps detecting suspicious behavior. But you have to log carefully because you don't want to log people's data in an open, accessible way. So infrastructure, brief mention. This is run on OpenShift. It's a Kubernetes-based solution by Red Hat. It's run on a government cloud. There is an operators team for the production environment, so we don't actually have access to that. Regarding the deployment guidelines, what we did to actually address one problem that might arise regarding vulnerability is have the deployment configuration being written by the dev team. So we actually write the deployment template, and we can generate the different deployment files combining the template that's given by us, the parameters that's given by business people, and the secrets that's given by the operator, so database, passwords, and so on. It enables a formal communication between developers and operators. So briefly, and because I have 5 minutes left, I wanted to cover some of a bit of what's going on under the hood regarding one point particularly, that is the stateless multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication, I'm hoping that everybody has used multi-factor authentication once, but you actually have to provide not just a password, but a password, a token, one-time password, such as Google Authenticator, something like that. Well, in our case, our users, citizens, have authentication factor. And a login is the completion of all necessary factors for a given context. So if you have been on a travel, you'll know that if you log in with Google somewhere else, Google is going to start asking for different stuff. That can happen, but what's important is that there is a variable factor list. It's not always the same list, and it depends on the user. So a given user on one point might have just a password asked on a system, but in another context, it might have a different set of challenges required. So how do you keep track of a stateful transaction in a stateless scalable request environment? So one thing is using sessions. I'll keep track in the session of what's going on with this user. Whenever the first request comes, I set you a session, here you go, and I'll start keeping track of that interaction in the session. That goes to the DB. The other alternative is using signed tokens. So signed tokens will enable us to actually keep track of what's going on by sharing a token with the user on each request. We'll see how that works right now. So it's a challenge-based authentication. The user, I hope that size is readable from the back. The user will say, OK, I'm trying to log in. Here is my reply for the username challenge. The backend will say, OK, what are the list of your authentication factors? So you say, OK, you need to send me the password. So it can send me what's the next request for me to handle, and also it will send me a token saying relevant stuff. In this case, what it says is that I have passed no challenges yet. So I got my token. Next step, I'll send you my password. I'll send you what's the challenge I'm replying to. It's password. What's my password? That's not my password. And also, what's the token that you sent me before? So that token is signed, so they can actually, the backend can actually know, hey, I got this guy. Yeah, you need now TOTP. So, but you have now passed the password challenge. And that token is also signed. So the next one is, OK, here is my TOTP, my token, the last token you said that's already passed challenge. So the backend now says, OK, this guy has passed TOTP and password challenges. You're good to go. And with that code, I can follow up on a OpenID Connect authentication strategy. So the benefits of this, we avoid the database until necessary. So we'll provide a session once the user has fulfilled all necessary challenges. This also helps us avoid heavy queries, because when we have to retrieve maybe profile data and so on, it's a bit heavier. And there's no affinity. It really doesn't matter which backend instance running handles my request. To wrap up briefly in 1 minute. Takeaways. Well, first, I don't know if you have had to sell Django recently, but if you go on the site, it will say things like, Django is reassuringly fast, ridiculously fast, fully loaded, reassuringly secure. And well, it is. We know that, but for instance, people in the government did not know that, and they have gotten to know it. Business people love the adaptability that these solutions have, and that is in great part because of Django, Python. Technology and operators love availability and scalability. We are, from their word, we are the best behaved citizen of their cluster. Finally, Django security is reassuring. Django is real secure. We have been audited and stuff like that. But it's important to know why. Try elevation of privilege. It will help you do some threat modeling, understand security settings, avoid disabling checks, of course. Set non-default global configuration, so if you're going with the defaults, at least look at them or copy and paste them on your settings. Make your code and annotation explicit. Be semantic, be clear. If somebody's going after you to look at the code, it has to know from the description and what's there, who has access to that, and work on availability. Thank you.
What are you using Celery for?
Because we do tasks. For instance, we have to retrieve certificates that have been revoked because if you get your national ID stolen, you go to a police department and say, I've been stolen, and they'll cancel that ID. So we have to regularly retrieve that list and perform some updates, for instance.
That was great, thanks.
Thank you.
What was the bottleneck that you ran into as far as volume of users?
Well, we really anticipated more than maybe that's actually there. Actually, scalability has been working great so far, and even with things such as our local IRS saying from one day to another, hey, you have 1 week to fulfill this, and you have to use this authentication factor. So everybody was like, on a couple of hours, traffic jumped 10-4, and no calls, no anything. So that's great. That's in great part because of 12 factors. We really think that it's a great path to scalability. It avoids a lot of pain points there.
Yes, thank you for the talk. It was excellent.
Thank you.
Given how mission critical this all seems, how many automated tests did you write around this? And if any, I'm sure you did. What type of tests?
So there was a testing bit on this that I stripped on the plane over here, but we use the default. Everything is unit tested. We use the default Django test, the Django test framework. For React, we use Jest.
Great talk. How do you handle production support?
Sorry?
How do you handle production support since you guys are?
We are not operators. So it's actually handled. We are the third line. So the first line is the government. They have this system support. Then there's the specific our product owner support, and there's us. So we handle 9 to 5, let's say. There are no special needs regarding that.
Great talk.
Thank you.
So you mentioned that 10% of the population is using the service, and just above 70% of the population is connected to the internet. So that's about 14%. I was wondering if you envision that number increasing over time.
Yes.
And if so, how? And like, how can you drive that level of adoption?
Okay. Disclosure. Yes, that number I forgot to mention. It's increasing. It's been increasing steadily. Besides IRS sudden requests and so on, it's been increasing steadily from the fact that new organizations and new procedures are jumping into the platform. So for instance, if you want to travel to Brazil, you need to get the yellow fever vaccination, and to get that vaccine, you need to get a number where they require you to. So every holiday season, there's like, whoop, and it's increasing. It keeps increasing, and it increases coverage. We don't actually have a saying or an interest besides the marvelous things that it can do regarding user increase. We are not driving commercially the product, but yeah.
This seems like a very critical system. Were you guys involved in some penetration testing or some third-party evaluation of your software?
Yeah, actually, AGESIC hired. We did the work, but they had testing teams, they had penetration testing team, they had security audits team. in production, systems are running that are doing other checks, for instance, in traffic and so on. I'm not going to say a lot about that, but yeah, they did penetration testing from third parties.
Yeah, thanks for the talk. Do you see yourself working on other projects at the government or country level?
Yes, actually, we are right now working on the, let's say, next step. It's not actually the next step, but it's an associated project that's regarding authorization. So you will be able to provide authorization to organizations, both public and private, access to your personal data. For instance, you go to a health institution, and a different one, and they'll ask your previous health provider to access your health records. So you'll be able to provide on the authorization platform consent for that. It's very tightly related. It's the authorization part. This is the authentication part, let's say.
I was wondering that in your country, has any plan for different level of the open data? Like maybe there's a complete open data, and there's some data is accessible by government and other like companies, and some of the data is only restrict to yourself.
I could not understand your question.
Sorry, is there any kind of plan is that for the data has a different level, open data for the different parties?
So there is open data initiative back home. It does not work. There is also privacy protection enforcement, so that's not actually combined the two. And I don't know if that answers your question. I'm not. We can discuss it later in the hallway if you are. Thank you.
One more. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all.